Morning, everyone. I'm Uri. I'm one of the local setup people. I'm going to be chairing this session, for which we have 3 contributed papers. And we're going to start with postdoctoral researcher from the same group as Vincent from Wageningen. And Paulan Korenhof is going to be talking about the digital twins, and what does it mean for us.
Welcome, everyone. I'm honored to be here. So I'm Paulan Korenhof. Until I think 3 or 4 days ago, I was a postdoc researcher with Vincent Blok at the philosophy group in Wageningen. And since the 1st of September, I'm working in a tenure track at the environmental policy department, same university, 2 floors down, and we will still be working together. So I will be talking here in this presentation about the research I did on digital twins. Part of this research is about the question, how are we to understand digital twins philosophically? What issues of power and representation come with them? And what are their implications? This was a 3-year-long postdoc project. I did it with Vincent Blok and Sanneke Kloppenburg for the majority of the time. And the focus was on the digital twins that were important for Wageningen University. Those were digital twins in the life sciences and earth system sciences. So, can I see some hands? Did anyone already hear of digital twins? Is it a familiar concept? I see some hands, but also I'll roughly give some ideas about the idea behind it, and then during the presentation I give more pieces of information, so I hope by the end it's clear, to the extent that it can be clear, what a digital twin can be or is. So one of the first conceptualizations of digital twins are by Stargell and Glaesgen in 2012. Those were digital twins of airplanes, and they conceptualized a digital twin as an integrated multi-physics, multi-scale probabilistic simulation of an S-built vehicle or system that uses the best available physical models, sensor updates, fleet history to mirror the life of its corresponding twin. The digital twin is ultra-realistic. So the idea of the digital twin is, as I like to describe it, a kind of a model on steroids. It's real life, it's connected to a particular physical entity or system. It's the idea that it mirrors this system or physical entity towards its complete life cycle. It changes with the twin over time, and then at the same time, by offering predictions and scenarios, it can offer us affordable or, actionable information on how we can deal with then the physical twin. So don't worry, there are a lot of issues with this. I will get to them all. For this I wrote 2 papers, and some parts will come back in the presentation. It's an ongoing research. So the first of all is steering representations. I wrote that with Vincent Blok and Sanneke Kloppenburg, where we critically looked at the concept of digital twins and pulled it a bit apart and tried to figure out what kind of assumptions are behind this concept, what are the problems. We describe it as, for instance, a substitute, as Vincent already hinted at, but I will not go into that part. Another article I wrote was with Else Giesberts and Janita Sandersen, and here we looked at the data collection used for a digital twin. We interviewed digital twin designers, and we looked critically at data to figure out what choices are made for the data collection and how does the technology itself influences the data that's collected and its non-neutrality. So this all flows into the research I'm working on today, and it's underway. It's on Destination Earth. This is a €150 million project of the European Commission to develop a digital twin of planet Earth, and the goal is to help us mitigate climate change. It is, in a sense, a digital twin that should help us save the planet. The question I will be discussing here is, what world does this DestinE project create when it's trying to save the planet? So for that, I first take a little step back and draw on an article by Vincent, that technology produces a world. So our understanding of the world is deeply informed by our knowledge and by the technologies we use. For instance, microscope shows us what happens on a lower level. Satellites of the planet show climate from a higher perspective. Data collections allow us to get different views of the planet. And this all shapes our view. So by mediating human actions and embodying information at an ontic level, concrete technologies influence the meaning we give to the world, how we understand it and how we engage with it. So as Blockton states, technological inventions at an ontic level have an ontological impact. It constitutes a world. So I write this with a capital W to mean the ontological view of the world and not the world as concrete planet Earth. And it's our understanding of the planet we live on, the climate we live in, what it is, the different elements, and this constitutes the meaning of this concept. So our question then is, we are interested in this ontological world production by DestinE as an ontic technological invention. But what is DestinE and how can we approach and explore a technology like this? So this is where, for me, it became quite challenging because DestinE is a $150 million project. It's not a miniature software program that you can just analyze. So I'm trying to map DestinE and in order to explore its world production. For this, one of the first things I did was trying to draw what this is. So DestinE is not just a software program. It's highly advanced computing based on data models, but for that you need data. For data you need sensors, you need satellites, you need data centers, you need people doing data entry, you need an infrastructure, you need protocols, you need time and money, which is a massive challenge, and it turned out in my earlier research. You need resources. You need processing power, there's a connectivity to the internet, so the infrastructure plays a massive role. You want data sets to be combined. We have developers that develop the hardware and the software, which also influences what will go into a digital twin. And then we have the output. We have an interface where users see what a digital twin presents. That gives them knowledge. But at the same time, this interface is plugged in somewhere. It's in a certain context. It has a certain locality. It's embedded in a culture, in certain values. So it's not just a software program. And technology is this massive assembly, as I will go into. So how I make sense of this is the assemblage or assembly theory. It was developed by Deleuze and Guattari. Delanda developed a bit further, and I mainly rely on the work of Tafel on the assembly theory. And the idea is to make sense of the property and the parts and how it forms a whole. So the interesting thing of the theory, what I really like about it, is that it aims to move beyond the subject-object, human technology, biological, non-biological matter, and nature-cultural dichotomy by bringing it all together in a whole. It's referring not to an isolated part or an isolated technology, but to a constitutive process that in which diverse entities come together and form a collective entity. And the assembly refers to the process as well as to the result. And here it's particularly interesting to look at the interplay between the parts and the totality. Because the parts, like a human being, can have different actions, the technology can have different characteristics, but in the assembly together, certain actions, certain relations realize and others not. And in this realization of the parts, it comes together in this bigger assembly. It's an actualization of capacities. So if I start drawing it, the drawings are still suboptimal. It's a work in progress. If we want to identify and analyze these configurative relationships that constitute a world, for me it would be a bit like this. The DestinE technology produces a world. It offers a way of acting and perceiving. I call the digital twin a world information object. It goes with infrastructures because it needs to be shown to people. It needs to have an interface. It gives rise to human knowledge. It is implemented in governance where it will play a role. I mean, DestinE is intended to be part of the Green Deal, so it will have a massive impact there. It will give rise to labor, to maintenance. It will have an impact on the economy due to creating opportunities, labor choices. It will influence social concepts, but it will also, for instance, give rise to standards and protocols for those that want to engage with this technology. However, there's something else going on. At the same time, there's a world, an idea of our idea of what our world is, that produces DestinE. So in DestinE goes ideas of a world on what such a technology should look like, the data sets, there are resources going in, labor going in, human values, assumptions, and that leads to DestinE. So this is where the drawings got really chaotic. Yeah, practicing. This is the result after 4 years of art academy. You draw stick puppets and bad circles. So on the one hand, we have the circle of human thought and action, we have the contextual embedding, and we have the technical materiality. And in this crossfire, a world is produced. But to create this crossfire, it already comes from an idea of the world. And this new world will give sense of a new crossfire of human thought, contextual embedding, and technical materiality that gives a new world. So we have this kind of looping of world and evolution of world technology ideas. And that is what, for me, makes it also a bit challenging to think about how can, if we don't like DestinE as it is now, which I will present in a bit, because I don't, how can we make it better? How can we get out of this consistent loop in which assembly over assembly makes a new world? But first, tracing DestinE. I'm doing time, yeah. So DestinE is under development. It should be ready in about 2030. So I don't have that much already to go on. So for the purpose of this presentation, I will focus on the world production at the interplay of the configurative relation between policy that gave rise to DestinE, as Mark already mentioned, the twin transition, which is a pivotal part of this policy, and the technology. But with the disclaimer that all the parts can never be fully untangled, but I'm trying to trace the different elements. So the world according to DestinE, it's a world with a capital. So the birth of DestinE takes place between the twin transition of the Green Deal, that's looking for EU's sustainable future, and the digital strategy, which is looking for EU's digital future. And this is quite challenging, so I'll pick out some parts of the narratives. So the Green Deal narrative is focuses on to protect, preserve or conserve and enhance the EU's natural capital and protect the health and well-being of its citizens from environmental related risks and impacts. The transition to a sustainable Europe needs to be just and inclusive. The EU can use its influence to motivate neighbors or other countries to also work towards more sustainable goals. But also, what is an important part of the Green Deal is the need for the EU to maintain its security of supply and competitiveness when others are unwilling to act. So this is already quite an interesting narrative, where we can see that the Earth is framed as a problem for life and property of human beings, and a problem for economy, potentially the position of Europe, and the way we can live on the planet. This policy shapes the assembly that rests on this ideal framing of the world. And this ideal framing is a sustainable and self-sufficient EU with healthy and well-off citizens. Then we get to the other policy narrative, shaping Europe's digital future narrative. I was really surprised by this narrative well, I'll read it and I'm sure you'll focus what you figured out. So, European technological sovereignty is not defined against anyone else, but by focusing on the needs of Europeans and the European social model. The EU will remain open to anyone willing to play by European rules and meet European standards regardless of where they're based. A strong and competitive economy that masters and shapes technology in a way that respects European values. A European way to digital transformation, enhance democratic values, respect fundamental rights, contributes to sustainable, climate neutral and resource efficient economy. And it strives to make Europe a global leader in the data agile economy. So I was a bit surprised by the massive amount of European values, European focus. It's really Eurocentric, the digital strategy, which makes sense. It's for Europe. But then the question starts, oh, sorry, I'll skip that. It raises the question, what will a world be if Europe and Europe's digital future plays such a strong role? But I'll delve into it a bit because I also need to briefly discuss the digital twin narrative. It's a research I did with Vincent. In all the conceptualizations, we saw that the digital twin narrative relies on a few characteristics. That's that a digital twin should offer a one-to-one representation that is as realistic and as objective as possible. It should be holistic, so it should aim to reflect all the information. It's real-time, so it should be updated consistently. It predicts future states of the physical twin, in the case of DestinE, planet Earth. And the feedback is used to steer the physical entity, planet Earth, towards certain goals. So if we combine these three, so Earth is a threat for life, well-being, property and people, a digitally advanced society where all citizens participate and European values are embedded in the technology, and a digital twin, we get this. It's a project mainly run by the Meteor Institute and European Space Agency. It's a digital twin of planet Earth, mainly focused on climate data. Its goal is to visualize, analyze, predict, and model. It's very well presented. Yes, perfect. It's used to anticipate, stimulate, understand, and monitor planet Earth. And it's supposed to be a digital replica of our planet. It's presented as objective, realistic, but then obviously, but then the question is this the case? So a last element is it's supposed to be used by a diverse group of stakeholders. It's an open simulation platform with seamless fusion of real-time observations and high predictive modeling. And that works on that platform by the idea that consistently the physical space, planet Earth, is translated into a virtual replica that users can play with scenarios, predictions, and that it feeds into their choices on how to shape planet Earth, the physical space, Europe. However, as philosophers, I think we're all familiar with the fact that the map is not a territory. Choices are made, it's a representation. So it's never complete Earth that will be possible. It is, as Vincent would call it, a supplement. It offers something extra about the planet Earth. It's valuable for that. But at the same time, it's never the full planet. So always, something will always be missing. And then the question here, the ethical questions are, what entity is represented? Where does it start and stop? What is part of the entity? And what not? And why? So by digital twin, and this is also very strongly powered by the idea that we need to have that data is important for the economy, that we need to use supercomputing to show that as Europe we're digitally really well off. So it's a data-driven model, and it's complex, and the more complex, the more interesting it is, because Europe is apparently also partly looking at an excuse to use a supercomputer, and DestinE is probably the best way to do it. One of the issues here is that data is not neutral. They're made by all sorts of choices, what we put in, how we shape it, the metric we use, the format we use, the way we store it. And additionally, previous research has shown, my previous research in digital twins, that the technology here is ambivalent because it opens up options and it limits what it's forming. Scientists are quite happy to see we can collect this, so let's get the data it offers. New technologies offer new opportunities, and the opportunities are so interesting that often for digital twin use, they're used before the question is asked, do we need the data? This combination leads to a representation so far. So let's be clear, the digital twin is not built, so things may change. That's for me also a reason to do the research now, because maybe we can shape a different world. So first of all, the perspective of reality is datafied. It's based on mainly empirical data and observation, and it's quite reductionist. Another aspect of this worldview that it's rather narrow. While the idea is to have as much information as as possible, it's mainly quite disciplinary, limited approach. It's mainly weather-related. For instance, I didn't see any account of toxicologists that look at PFAS, for instance, which would be really interesting, especially for the Netherlands, to have an idea of the health of citizens and the climate. No social scientists, no health scientists, so it's really weather-aimed. It's quite zoomed in. It's zoomed in on Europe. So it's a digital twin of the planet. Climate covers the whole planet. And in the end, oh, I need to hurry. It's zoomed in. Additionally, it has blind spots. Waste. Where's the waste? Where's the energy use? So it is mentioned that digital technology consumes energy and leads to waste, but it's not in the model. It's not in the representation of Earth. So it looks quite clean if you look at it, if it's indeed developed without these parameters. Another issue is that because of the feedback loop and its implementation in governance, the digital twin representation is a system, and it works as a governing system. It's kind of a cybernetic system. So the input from the digital twin or the input from Earth is fed in the digital twin, but through the glasses of the earlier mentioned narrow view. And then it's fed back into the world. And what you get is a consistent loop again, where the world starts to look more like the digital twin, while the digital twin is aiming to look more like the Earth. And then the question is this the world as we would like it? The tricky thing here is that as a governing system, the predictions of the digital twin are not a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's actually its goal. It's the goal of the digital twin that the Earth starts to look like the predictions. And 2 minutes over, could be worse. So concluding, as an idea, I think DestinE could help improve saving the planet. It can offer information we do not have. It's absolutely valuable, but we need to get away of the narrative that it's realistic and objective. And also what I think is worrisome, that as a control system with feedback loops, it's very Eurocentric. It has European values built into the technology. And I know definitely as ethicists, we're all in favor of building values in design. But if this is a design for the planet and these are European values and you want the planet then to look like the representation you built, it can be a really creepy kind of digital colonialism. The datafied view of the world is limited. This doesn't necessarily have to be a problem, but we need to be aware and make that very explicit. And currently that's missing in the narratives. Additionally, the view of the environmental costs of DestinE itself versus its benefits is underdeveloped. So it's hidden in a cloud platform, and it makes it also very tricky to use for a user. For instance, if you run a model to see if your small company could be a bit more sustainable, but the model uses the energy of a normal household for 2 months, the question is, are these calculations sustainable? And we need to get some grip of that. So I think currently DestinE falls short on its sustainable and emancipatory potential. It could be there, but I think it needs to change a bit. My future research is, how do we unlock this? How do we ensure that it actually does what we want it to do? Thanks.